men make a story about there's a monster, we need to kill it. And the story is about trying to figure out how to kill a monster. And then women tell the story and they're like, there's a monster, we need to figure out how to live with it. And I thought that was interesting, but I've learned like what really interests me is there a monster or am I imagining it?
So first off, I really enjoyed Bad Things, but I noticed the last feature-length film you directed was like back in 2014. Is that correct?
Yes.
So what's been going on in this last decade?
Well, I think it's just a struggle to be a queer lady filmmaker making a kind of artistic, psychologically driven horror film. So lots of no's. And, it's just a fight to get your movies made. And then COVID slowed things down. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But we were able to kind of fight our way through COVID in the end when we realized it was around to stay. The fight for queer cinema is a hard road.
What was that fight or that process to getting a yes for Bad Things?
It went through different lives, but landing with my producers, Lizzie and Lexi, and them being willing to make it no matter what was, I think, what really, and, really gathering a team of artists and geniuses who were willing to go so many extra miles and really be taken advantage of to make this film. So it was really about our community coming together and pulling it off and finding the artists who would do that with me.
I love how the movie mainly focuses on the foursome. So you have this like really intimate setting, even in this kind of grand hotel or more expansive hotel. How was that in the directing of it? Did you have a more intimate setting? Did it help create the chemistry between the cast? How did you work with each individual actor?
Yeah, so it's like each actor really has their own magic and, expansive quality that I knew the story needed. And I really needed so much acting chops and talent from every single person because they have to go through so much. But then it's like you put them all together and then it's something else again. So it's kind of like managing the chaos and the magic and the wildness and not being intimidated by that force and really like letting it take the story. You kind of have as a director, you've got an understanding of what your perspective and what your instincts are, and that's ephemeral. And then you get this alchemy of them and somehow you just jump in. I don't know if I answered your question.
But in the casting process, let's say for example, I do love Hari Nef, and I had just seen Barbie. So there's like one image and then I see Bad Things. I'm like, oh, this is very surprising and different. So what did she bring to the role of Cal? And then also, of course, what did Gail bring to the role of Ruthie that really jumped off the page for you?
Well, I have an idea of the quality that they need, and the ensemble can go in so many different directions. But when I met with Hari I love Hari, and I always knew that Cal needed to be someone that everybody would fall for, and the charm and the magnetism had to be there. And Hari has all that. But when I did the Zoom with her, she had no makeup on and she just looked so vulnerable and so gorgeous and, so sad in a way. She has sadness and pathos. I think that's the real secret force of Hari is she's a dramatic, soulful actress who has so much pain in her. It's very unsettling because charm is the first thing you see. And so when she does become vulnerable, it's kind of a little bit of a shock. And that's really exciting to work with and sad. I didn't expect, I thought of Cal as being this mastermind person that, was charismatic and the center belle of the ball, and everybody kind of orbits around her, but I didn't expect her to have such heartache all the time, bring heartache to it. And you really relate to, even if she's passive aggressive and kind of orchestrating all these dynamics in a way, I didn't expect to also feel so heartbroken for her.
Absolutely. She definitely brought that for sure. Speaking of heartbreak, though, like Ruthie's backstory that we don't fully get explained in a linear way, but you really feel it throughout the story when she's talking about her mom or when you're seeing symbolically everything that's happening in the hotel. How do you decide what to bring in and how to kind of unfold that tale through the visual language?
Well, watching Ruthie grapple, she's sort of at war with herself too. And, I really wanted someone who could be larger than life and just have this wild energy and have the chops. I mean, Gail's such a phenomenal actress. And so it's almost like just having a conversation with Gail, it's like, there's so much behind everything all the time. And, you just want to see her, just let her loose and let her do her thing, kind of let her go wild. And she just has that, I don't know if the wildness comes from her emotions or her brain or her vulnerabilities, or she just springs so much. But so you're asking, how did I manage visually to
right, like the production design of the hotel itself, and then also at what moments you incorporate seeing a vision or seeing another person or what that person represents, that scene playing out represents for Ruthie in her life.
Okay. So funny because I keep seeing Hari peeking over you.
She wants to be part of the conversation, as she should.
Part of the reason that I've always been attracted to horror is because of the visuals that you can, it leaves these altered spaces where you can have creativity and kind of express yourself visually so well. And that was an important part of the story. And it was very designed. All of us, we had like the producers, the department heads, we all had this like kind of grid about when you're in the real natural world and when things start to topple and be questionable and be more psychological and spiritual, what shade of pinks that would be, and how the vulvas and the bed stands and how it gets red and lactates, and all of that is very designed and very mathy, really. So I think that as Ruthie kind of gets caught between being like a healthy person that's vulnerable and recognizes the truth of her unhealthy relationships and her attraction to this chaos of a woman, Fran, and then wants the safety of denying all that, denying the past, those two worlds really dictate the avenues that the aesthetics take.
I was really surprised. Well, first off, I love that you said that this is kind of like part of a trilogy that you imagine about motherhood. So I do love that aspect of it, but then also the kind of like woman's answer to The Shining. I know you've said, I know you said that you like didn't intend, like not everything was an intentional, callback, but how do you navigate the kind of channeling rage through a woman's eyes?
I think I crave expression. I feel very confined and angry, like I want to yell and show all the corners. I want to see these actors do that. I don't want them to be polite. I don't want them to be subtle. I want them to show it all. And so I think I took them and put them into a new world. And then the world allows them to be whatever they want. And I think the way that people are conditioned to be in the world makes us have rage, and it's just buried and it begs to explode. And so it's an explosion of norms, and I'm hungry to see where women go from that. And we see men do it in movies all the time, and in life we see men do that in life, and it's called Many Things That Are Different from When a Woman Does It.
Mm-hmm.
So when a woman is heated or angry, it's often shrill or unhinged. Mm-hmm. When a man does it, it's powerful and determined. So, that's the shift.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Speaking of like women in horror, and queer women in horror is a very important aspect of your filmmaking. What has been your personal relationship to horror and that draws you to that genre for your expression?
I've always felt comfort in seeing my world reflected back to me, or my fears reflected back to me, more than an artificial representation of a happy place, because I feel like the happy place that's presented to me, at least as a kid, was very alienating and I didn't relate to it. And so in a way that became more scary to me than watching like a Twilight Zone or a melodrama. I was very attracted to melodramas, and I wanted to see people and grown-ups as a child going through serious things. I didn't like chases, and I didn't like artificiality. And I think, part of that was having a non-traditional, like a single mom who's kind of crazy and being like an artsy weird kid and having stuff happen to me and being queer probably is, like all the different things. We're all so different. So to have these like happy norms can, I think, be a burden to society and to people. And so horror gave me comfort, I would say. And then it's just the question of our films. I think a lot about this, like somebody told me that like men and women make different kinds of stories. Like men make a story about there's a monster, we need to kill it. And the story's about trying to figure out how to kill a monster. And then women tell the story and they're like, there's a monster, we need to figure out how to live with it. And I thought that was interesting, but I've learned like what really interests me is there a monster or am I imagining it? That's kind of where I dwell, is that like blurry, confusing space.
I love that. Is there a monster or am I imagining it? But that's probably like the truest to life, right?
Yeah, or am I the monster?
Yeah, am I the monster? Also obsessed with Molly Ringwald in this movie, ready for her Scream Queen era. But how did that happen, first of all? And second off, what is it like to direct Molly Ringwald?
God bless and hail Molly Ringwald, because, she is so magnificent, such an artist, such a testament to her that she would be in this indie, pervy, strange, small, queer horror film, but usually when you find an actor that you're dying to have, you send them a letter and you wait and you hope they read it, and then you have Zooms and it takes forever. Now, when you're talking about someone that's an icon like Molly Ringwald, that process can take forever and you're never really sure that they're ever going to look at the script because there's a bunch of people that you need to get through. And I think she must have read it in like a couple days, because within 2 days we were Zooming, and then the next day she was going to do it. And like when I talked to her on the Zoom, it was just a lovely, inspiring conversation. And a lot of working with people is just kind of smelling them and seeing if you get them and if they get you. And it was a very a gorgeous kind of meeting. Like she was all I hoped, and I needed that icon of a actress and talent and her physicality for this role, because the argument of the film is really that motherhood is the relationship. It's like the God. And it's not just about like, oh, I had a complicated relationship with my mother. It's more about the spirituality of it. How it's your primal first relationship, your first heartbreak, and that you can't ever get away with it. But I always think of her as being in the sky. So I needed that larger than life presence. And does she deliver?
I really, first off, I love that there's like one guy in the movie. There were a couple other guys, but they are very much not important. I know that obviously it's like an inverse of what we often see, right? You'd be like, oh, the final girl, or like whatever, there's like one girl getting killed very violently. But how do you decide how you're going to depict the violence on screen, and what is the like practical process of that?
For me, the horror of a film is more about psychological, and it's more about unsettling feeling and uncanny and feeling disturbed and confused and ugly and icky. Those are the things that's where I feel it. But I also am very aware that that's different than maybe a jump scare or grossness or terror like we see in lots of other films. And I get really mad at the way women are depicted in films. And as much as I was there to celebrate all the emotions that a woman was allowed to play in this film and non-binary people, I wanted to see a guy, okay, you run, and we'll just watch you run for your life and try and hide your boob. And I want, so much attention to how to get the boob to show and how he clutched. And Jared God bless Jared. I totally love him and want to work with him again. He's such a talent, gave his whole being to this, knew it was like, kind of sacrificing himself to the women, and and he did it, and he took it so beautifully seriously, and it was just maybe my revenge, or I was just in the same way that I want to shift the gaze. I wanted to just say, well, what's it like to have to just see you running and be the one panicking? Because we don't watch the other deaths in the same way. So traditionally, in a horror film or a slasher film especially, you'll watch, I think they've counted it up. There's been some stuff that it's like 3 times as long to watch a woman die, and how subjective it is and how different it is when we experience a man dying. So I'm behind the camera now.
You're the captain now. Okay. So hopefully this means that there's going to be many more yeses in your future. But are you hoping to stay within the horror genre, or how do you kind of want to branch out even in that same, canvas?
I love genre. I mean, I love all movies. I'm compelled and attracted to horror because artistically I like the places that it can go. And I'm always like, often I'll get like a story I love and then be like, how this could be better. So I don't know if I'd ever let go of adding the supernatural into it, because I tend to, want to speak with a loud voice, and horror lets me do that. But I mean, I would love to do a romantic comedy. I love comedy, and I don't know if I could ever do that. Like, can't think of one idea, but my other 2 projects that I have are both horror. The next one is, so there's a 3rd one in my trilogy about motherhood called Daughter. And then I have one called Frigid, which is older women in a slasher film.
I saw a little bit about Frigid and I was like, I want to know what is happening here. Are either of these, how far along in your process are either of these, would you say?
Oh, they're all written. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So everything's, because of the strike, they're all kind of in a drawer. So, everything's ground to a halt, and I'm very excited by the labor movements across the country and find it so powerful. So I'm ready for a fairer world.
Yes.
So I can dust those off, and I think they'll move faster.
Oh, wonderful. Well, I cannot wait to see those when everyone has better working conditions and the fair pay that they deserve. Thank you so much.
Lovely talking to you. And I'm never going to get over this backdrop. I hope it's not just for this Zoom.
No, it's everyone that ever speaks to me is going to see this. Have a great day. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.